Hi, friends. I'm so excited to welcome you to another episode of the Business of Inner Peace. Today, I have the honor of speaking with Vicki. Her full name is Vicki Paris Goodman, and she's the author of To Sam with Love, a surviving spouse's story of inspired grief. After the death in 2019 of her husband, Sam, who was the love of her life, she was unexpectedly flooded with optimism, presented with a host of possibilities for an exciting and meaningful future. She received valuable insights, seemingly coming from an outside source, enabling her to conceive a more realistic and uplifting understanding of death and loss. And she knows that these concepts will free others to face the passing of a loved one with a far more optimistic outlook. So grab your cup of tea or coffee, whatever your favorite drink is, and get ready to tune in to this amazing conversation.
Welcome to the Business of Inner Peace. I'm your host, Erin Jean, and I'm so glad you're here. Let's pretend we're sitting in my living room enjoying a cup of coffee or tea and getting to know each other just a little better. That's what I love. I love getting to hear your story. I love feeling connected by the spirit of understanding that our stories bring. Today, I'm sharing some of my story, but I hope someday soon you'll be telling me yours. Listen, I know that you're feeling overwhelmed with life and nothing is exactly how you'd like it to be. Your marriage is not what you hoped for, motherhood is harder than you imagined, and you've lost yourself somewhere in the mix of responsibilities. Well, if you're ready to bring some more peace and joy into your life, reconnect with God who made you, and start living a life you love, then grab your cup of coffee or tea and let's dive into today's show.
Hi, Vicki. I'm so happy to have you on today. Welcome to the podcast.
Oh, hi, Erin. I'm really thrilled to be here. Thank you for having me.
It is my pleasure. Well, it sounds like you have one amazing story inside of you. I would really love to start off today with you just sort of sharing whatever you'd like about this beginning part of losing your husband and these messages you're talking about coming in.
Okay, I'd be happy to. Yeah, so I lived my entire life pretty much in Southern California until my husband Sam and I moved to Arizona for retirement in 2017. And almost immediately after moving into our new house, within just a couple of months, we received a terminal diagnosis for Sam, uh, liver cancer that was quite advanced and had spread to the pancreas. So I will admit right up front that even though Sam lived another 2 years, that I did a lot of my grieving as soon as we got that diagnosis.
Yeah.
So, we had this 2 year ordeal, but it really wasn't all an ordeal because he did very well for a year and a half. But, you have that in the back of your mind that this probably isn't going to end the way you want it to. We had been told it would not. There was no chance he would survive it. So anyhow, 2 years later, Sam passes, and almost immediately on the very day he passed, I was kind of seeing sunlight coming through what I thought would be the cloudiest day of my life. And it was unseemly, that my initial reaction was to kind of push it away. It's like, oh, what is this? Then I thought, if I was so strong during our 2 year ordeal, and I took such good care of Sam toward the end of it when he needed taking care of, that maybe if good things want to come my way, maybe I should let them. So I made a decision to just kind of let myself be led by this. I call it a helping hand was coming down. It was very likely God who was helping me forward. And somehow I was an opening for that, which is kind of unusual in itself because I was raised in a very secular family where my parents and grandparents thought people who believed in God were foolish and weak. But even so, before we got Sam's diagnosis, a few years before, I'd say, I started to believe in a higher power. but I hadn't taken that very far. It was pretty rudimentary at the time Sam passed. But all of a sudden, I wanted to know about the afterlife because Sam was not here on earth with me anymore. And I thought, I want to know if he's still there and where he is. So there was a hospice chaplain that was available to me for a year after he passed. About once a month, we'd talk. And that was very helpful. And I started asking her questions, a lot of questions about the afterlife. And she recommended a story to me of a neurosurgeon, a secular neurosurgeon, who had had a near-death experience. He'd had a brain infection. His colleagues were taking care of him in the hospital. He was in a coma for 7 days. Anyhow, this story of the neurosurgeon somehow took me the rest of the way toward believing strongly in God and an afterlife. The story to me was that convincing. And since then, I've read other near-death experiences, and they have a lot in common, which kind of lends credibility to all of them or to many of them. So this is what happened first, is all this optimism coming my way that I decided to accept. And over the next year or two, serendipitous events were happening. And at first I just chalked them up to coincidence. But, I have a list here of 7 of them, that happened within months of Sam's passing, a couple of them even before he passed, actually. And there were too many to chalk up to happenstance. And then all these opportunities coming my way to do things. And I felt, even though I just lost the love of my life, I felt motivated to embrace these opportunities. And they all worked out really well, too, which didn't make sense. Like auditioning for a play at the community theater when I'd never done anything like that before. And all these other people auditioning were obviously so experienced. And I thought, well, at least I tried. What happens? I get the lead role. I mean, it was crazy what was going on. Insights coming my way and clarity that I didn't attribute to coming from within me. It just seemed like too much, too fast, too much wisdom. I'd love to believe that, I came up with all this on my own, but I really don't think I did. Again, the helping hand. So all of this was happening. And after 2 years of it, and things that I'll tell you about, I thought this could be a book that could help other people. And some of the best of the insights came to me after I published the book. So those are in 3 audio episodes that I have that I will talk about at the end of this conversation, because I want people to gain access to those and hear these insights. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. So,
Wow.
yeah.
I mean, what a journey. And just out of curiosity, because were you previously, before Sam died, were you involved in any way in like theater or anything like that?
Yeah, I was, but never on stage. I
Okay.
reviewed theater. On the side. I was a mechanical engineer, actually. That's what I'm retired from. That's what I did. But on the side, I loved theater. And so there was this small newspaper in Long Beach, California, where we were living for the last 24 years before we moved to Arizona. And I reviewed theater for over 20 years for that little paper in Long Beach, and also other places in Los Angeles and Orange County. I'd go wherever I wanted. It was the best gig. They didn't pay me, but all the other theater critics in the area who did get paid for their reviews were so envious of me, because I got to decide exactly what I wanted to do, what I didn't want to do. They had to accept assignments. And they said, "You have the best gig, Vicki, in town." So that was kind of fun.
I love acting, and so that just is intriguing to me, this very wild connection. And then obviously your years of watching paid off. You were able to
Yes, so.
transmute it.
Well, what was interesting about that is when I went to this audition, these people sounded so experienced, and they probably were, but they were all overacting in a way that, and this is from the theater reviewer in me, they were all overacting in a way that a lot of directors of plays like, but not all. And it occurred to me, maybe this director wants a more true to life portrayal. That's why I stayed, and I wound up getting that part. But that's an aside that doesn't have much to do with what we're here for.
I
So.
know it doesn't, but I just found it fascinating. I had to ask about it. Um, wow. So this is so interesting. What were the connections between the messages that you were getting where you really had this aha, like someone else that's grieving could benefit from it?
Yeah, well, this is one of I think the most powerful one that came to me after I published the book. It's in the audio episodes. And basically, it's just that, is death really tragic? And what I mean by that is if you believe in a loving God and a beautiful afterlife, as suggested in these near-death experiences, for example, of the neurosurgeon, and if God has a plan for each of us, and his plan was for your spouse, let's say, to pass into the afterlife ahead of you, leaving you with some life to live as best you possibly can, and then knowing that later you will join your deceased loved one in the afterlife. What's so terrible about that? It's almost enviable if you read about accounts of the afterlife from these near-death experiences. It's almost enviable to go there earlier as opposed to later. As strange as that sounds, our culture conditions us to think of death and loss as tragic, in fact, the worst of things that can happen to us. But are they really? And it's funny when I've mentioned this to people I know, the ones who do believe in God and an afterlife, and most people do, they nod knowingly, as if everybody knows this, but we don't connect the dots because of the cultural conditioning. So when we hear that someone's lost someone, we still say, "Oh, I'm so sorry for your loss. What can I do for you?" And I mean, I even still do that because what am I going to do? Go into this long explanation, when someone has just experienced, you're not going to do that. So instead, what I'm trying to do here with you and others is to start a movement to get this message out there and to acknowledge what so many people who have a strong faith already believe, but haven't connected those dots because of that strong cultural conditioning. So it would be really great if we just acknowledged what we all believe anyway, and then spread it around so that everyone can lose someone without grieving so hard and so long. Does
Yeah.
that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah. One of the past guests that I had, she actually brought up a really interesting point that in other cultures and, longer ago times, that it was normal to have like a procedure around grief, and that the community was a big part of the grief with you. Immediately, I kind of think of the Jewish culture. I know that they have a very like strict set of processes of what's supposed to happen on each day after their loved one has passed. And I like the idea just because I feel like it's validating the person that's grieving, and it's also giving you something constructive to do. Because I think that the hardest part, kind of to what you're saying, is like, well, I believe in God and I believe that, those that have a relationship with God are going to go into heaven, but I don't want to be disrespectful to someone else's belief. And so I do say exactly what you're saying. Like, I'm so sorry for your loss. And how can I, support you? It makes me curious, like, what would be our alternative thing that we would say? Like, I wouldn't want to be like, your loved one is in a better place if that person doesn't believe it. Do you know what I mean? I wouldn't want to pour salt in their wound, I guess. What are your
That's right.
thoughts?
That's why I'm talking about a movement here to spread this far and wide, so that even if not everyone is going to believe these things, at least people who have faith in God and an afterlife. As I said, I'm finding the vast majority of people do, so that they can have a much easier time with this concept. And I used to think my message was applicable to people who had just lost someone, or people who were in the midst of dealing with a terminal diagnosis for their loved one, or for people who were sick themselves and not likely to survive the illness. But now I'm thinking that this message might best be for people who aren't in any of those positions yet, so that they can have a chance to process these concepts now while they're not under duress, so that they're prepared later, because we all are going to go through the loss of someone close to us at some point, right?
Yeah.
So I actually think people who aren't going through this are the best receivers of these concepts now.
Yeah. Yeah, I've always loved the idea too that, right, I really believe that we're a spiritual being inside of a human body, just having this human experience. And I love looking at nature and noticing how nature transforms. Like, obviously, the butterfly and caterpillar are just the most beautiful example of that, right? It's like, well, the caterpillar is still there, but just in a different form. Um, it just makes me curious. Did you have any experiences like that where you felt like Sam is still here in a way, like anything?
Yeah, let me tell you a couple. One's really short, the other will take a couple of minutes to talk about. So the short one first. I had two celebrations of life for Sam, one in Los Angeles, a big one. But before that, we had made a lot of friends in the short time we'd been in our new town in Arizona. And I couldn't even, it was too, we knew too many people to even have this thing at my house. So I was driving to this venue where I was having his first celebration of life in our little town here. And I'm almost there to the place. And I knew there would be sunflowers on the tables there because I'd asked for them and they assured me there would be, because Sam's favorite flower was a sunflower. He loved sunflowers. He was trying to grow them. He'd buy them at the store when they were on sale and bring them home. He loved sunflowers. Okay. So I'm driving there. I'm almost to the place, and suddenly there's this little funny looking, almost cartoonish bright blue car in front of me. And coming up from the roof of that car was a plastic flower, and it was bent back toward me so that I could see it wasn't just any flower. It was a plastic sunflower. So I thought, have I ever seen a flower coming up from the roof of a car before? I couldn't recall ever seeing any kind of flower coming up from the roof of a car. So here I am. It's 45 minutes before this event for Sam is going to start. I'm a quarter mile away from the place, and this is what's in front of me on the road.
That's so fun.
Now, the story you're really going to love is this one, I think. So soon after Sam passed, I would go to bed and turn out the lights. And within about 3 to 5 minutes, while I'm still awake, but just relaxing, in advance of falling asleep, this smoky grayish white thing would seem to appear. But usually it was so subtle that I wasn't sure I was really seeing anything, I think, but sometimes it would be more vivid. And I thought, that's hard to ignore, but still I was thinking, I don't know about this. But I started talking to it, and I started hoping to see it every night. And I did most nights. But one time it didn't appear for about 2 weeks. And I thought, oh, maybe it satisfied its mission and it's not coming back. But then it came back again. And so I'd talk to it and I'd say, hi, sweetie, and I was just assuming it was Sam, a manifestation of his soul being here. And it comforted me. I really liked seeing it. After a few months, it changed color. It changed to a neon yellow green, a really vibrant sort of yellowy, limey green. And I thought, well, that's different. That kind of lends credibility to it really being here. But again, sometimes it would be so subtle, most of the time. It would be so subtle that I'd say, Vicki, you're imagining things. This just probably isn't here. But then it would appear vivid sometimes. And I think, again, hard to ignore. Well, after a year of this, I was kind of growing weary of wondering if this was Sam or not. And I'd started to pray for the first time in my life. I didn't feel comfortable praying for myself. It didn't seem right to me. So I'd pray for other people who were having had times or who had lost someone or who were sick or whatever, or I'd pray for our country, whatever I could think of that might be worthy of my prayers. And I just talked to God about these things. So one day, a year after Sam passed, I was talking to God during the day, which I don't usually do. Usually I wait until bedtime. And I said, God, tonight when I go to bed, I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. And I know I never ask for things for myself, but I'm going to break that rule. And I hope you don't mind. And I said, I really want to know whether the neon yellow green thing is Sam. So I have a plan. This is what you can do. And I said, okay, so if it is Sam, just make the neon yellow green thing appear differently than ever before, maybe more vibrant, maybe make it move differently, because usually it would take 3 to 5 minutes to appear, and then it would kind of float gently around or kind of go in and out. That's what it usually did. So I was just saying, make me certain that it's him. And if it's not him, give me jet black, which would be the convincing absence of the phenomenon. And then I would know it hasn't been Sam all this time. And if it looked pretty much the way it always did, I just know that God had chosen not to do as I'd asked, and I'd be no worse off, right? So that night it was getting to be bedtime. And I thought, what have I done? What if I get jet black? Am I ready to find out that this hasn't been Sam all this time? But I couldn't stay awake forever. So I go to bed and I turn out the light. And instead of the usual 3 to 5 minutes before the neon yellow green thing appeared, it was there immediately. And it was extremely vibrant. And I thought, hi, sweetie. And then it just frantically shot across my view about 5 times inside of a minute or two, instead of the gently floating around in and out. No, frantically back and forth a few times and then gone. So I burst into tears and I thanked God, and I promised him I'd never question the identity of the phenomenon again.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
What a profound experience that you had.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being willing to share that with us.
Oh, you're welcome. I love
So
sharing that story.
it really sounds to me like since losing Sam, your relationship with God has begun or deepened or strengthened. Would you agree with that?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. I believe completely. And, it's funny. I mean, this is probably obvious to everyone who was raised with a belief in God. But, there's such a big difference between being secular and faithful as far as whether you're afraid of dying or not.
Mm.
I am no longer afraid of death. And even though I grieved for what happened to my life after Sam passed, when I started realizing all these things, I didn't really grieve so much for him not being there anymore. I didn't feel like I'd really lost him. The main grieving was because my life was changing. And, we always, as human beings, have a fear of uncertainty and unknowns. And, it takes a while to process all of that. It was a huge life change. But I don't feel like Sam's gone. It's funny. I saw a quote online from this neurosurgeon I was talking about that had the near-death experience. And he says, the brain is like a filter or reducing valve that takes the knowledge of the universe that you actually share with God when you're there. You know everything, according to him. says it takes all that knowledge down to kind of a manageable, very small amount that we have access to while we are here on earth. And it made so much sense to me because another quote I read online was that the body dies, and the brain along with it, of course, leaving the soul to go to the afterlife. So all of these little snippets help to explain these concepts that I'm fully convinced of and that I'd really like to help people to see as well so that they won't grieve so hard or so long. Another thing that I did other than talk to the hospice chaplain after Sam passed was the hospice also offered me a support group. The lady that ran the support group, she told me on my very first visit to the support group, I got there early, and so we were talking about her background, and she said she rolled up into a ball after her husband passed and didn't emerge for 7 years.
Wow.
And she was leading this support group. So, I'm here to pass along a better way.
Yeah, absolutely. Their grief is interesting, and I do believe that the main thing, and it's like the rest of life, that it's your perspective on this event that is going to completely change how you live, moving forward. And I think really the thing that causes us the most pain in anything that we're experiencing is our perspective, right? When we can shift our perspective on something, the pain will ease. Or the opposite, right? If you shift your perspective to like a really negative perspective, your pain can increase with what you're in. So I love this idea that you're kind of preparing people for a way to look at grief, the way to look at loss before they're experiencing it. I'm curious what you would say to the person that's like in it and really hurting. What would be your encouragement or the tool that you would hand them?
I would ask them to listen. I would ask them if they would like to listen to my 3 audio episodes that are about 12 to 15 minutes each in length, just to see if they like what they're hearing. They might not want to hear that at that particular time. And I'd also very gently ask them if they have felt any guidance coming their way and maybe pushed it away because out of guilt or like I almost did, because the timing seemed all wrong. It wasn't, but it seemed all wrong based on that cultural conditioning again. You just have to kind of feel your way with people who are really hurting, I think, and if they're completely just say no, 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 or maybe later or something, I guess you have to respect their wishes while kind of knowing that this could really help them. If you can't convince them of that, they're not going to be an opening for it. And that's exactly why I said maybe this is a better message for people who aren't in it.
Yeah.
Yet.
Yeah, I agree. I think having some level of being prepared in all things, right? It helps us. And the awesome and the goodness about what you're doing is helping to create a conversation around grief, which is something we don't talk about often enough, to make it so that we can think about it before and maybe know how to handle it. There's you and a few other soldiers out there are really bringing grief to the forefront, and I think that has a lot of value.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I didn't expect to spend a portion of my post-working years this way, but I think it's worthwhile. It's given me a chance. I've never been a volunteer type or someone who really, focuses on helping others. It just hasn't been a huge part of my life as it is for so many. And this has given me a way to give back that I never imagined. And I seem to be doing well at it, and that encourages me to keep on. And so it's worth whatever I'm sacrificing, to write the book and create the audio episodes and figure out the tech involved in all this stuff. It's been worth it because I really believe in it.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And it's a beautiful way to bring joy into your life and to others and give you purpose. And I really am touched by how you've strengthened your relationship and created a relationship with God. I think that that's really special too. Well, would you let our listening audience know exactly where they can connect with you and get those audios and everything?
Yeah. Do we have time for me to give a couple of tips to survivors as well?
I
Let
would
me
love
do
that.
Okay, Erin, let me do that first. So I have some tips for you. Be open to guidance you may feel is coming your way, regardless of the timing of it. Um, Trust it and let yourself be led. And if opportunities are coming your way, you might be inclined to say, too soon. But you know what? Embracing these possibilities is the starting point for that new chapter of life that you will be embarking on, that you already are. So you may as well, you can start slow, but you may as well do something that's going to be exciting and new for you. Why not? And the best thing I did was to strike a balance between activity and alone time. People will tell you that after you lose someone, they'll say, just keep yourself as busy as possible so you don't have time to think or feel. I instinctively knew that that was bad advice, well intended, but not good advice. And so I ignored it. Striking a balance between these new activities, these exciting things that you can start doing or continue doing, as the case may be, and the alone time necessary to process what's happening to your life. It's a huge change, and you do need to process it. So if you spend all your time processing that, it would be maybe depressing, right? But if you're having lunch with friends, or if you're, singing karaoke for the first time, as I did right after Sam passed, or, auditioning for a play or whatever it is, it just makes your life, it makes it so much easier to do that processing of what's happening to your life without falling into depression. So strike a balance. So yes, where people can contact me. Okay, you can contact me at my website, VickiParisGoodman.com. It's Vicki, Vicki, Paris, like the city in France, Goodman.com. I have some blog articles there. But the most important thing, and I really want to emphasize this, is a free gift. And that's those audio episodes I talked about. They're free. Get them at inspiredgrief.com. All you have to do is put in your first name and your email address, and you'll subscribe to the 3 audio episodes. They will completely upend the way you think of death and loss. And then my book, To Sam with Love, that I have special pricing at inspiredgrief.com/book. I've discounted the pricing there. So that's the best pricing currently available for my book. And the book will serve as a roadmap to moving into that next chapter. So I see the audio episodes and the book as a kind of a toolkit, the complete package.
Awesome. Well, if it's okay with you, I really love ending every podcast episode with a prayer. So are you open to that?
I sure am.
Awesome. Okay. Dear Heavenly Father, I just thank you for Vicki. I thank you so much for the work that she's doing and how she's giving of herself to support others on this path of grief. We pray especially for anyone out there that's listening today that is grieving and really having a hard time with all the change and the pain and the things that are going on in their life. Lord, we just pray that you would comfort them and that you would bring them resources and hope and show up in a very real way that they know it's you. And we just thank you so much for this time that you've given us for this conversation. May it bless many lives. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Erin.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you're feeling blessed by the content here, the number one way you can show me is by leaving me a written review of the show. I'd be forever grateful. Knowing that you're out there listening helps me know that I'm truly living out God's purpose in my life. The other thing you can do is take a screenshot of this episode, share it with a friend, or better yet, tag me on your Instagram stories. Remember, you are seen, known, and loved. May God richly bless you today. All my love, Erin Jean.